Peace and blessings, love and light, and welcome to another edition of the How Now podcast, where we talk about how to live in the now. I am your host, Kim Martin Raymond. I am a minister, spiritual life coach, author, and founder of Redefining You LLC, where I help my clients to realign themselves mind, body, and spirit. And welcome to this edition of the show. If this is your first time listening into the podcast, welcome. We're so happy that you're here, joining us in season 2, where we're talking about wellness journeys, where we're talking about health and wellness, spiritual wellness. We're talking about mental health. We're talking about all things that are happening in this now. So make sure that you go to www.hownowpodcast.com, click on your favorite podcast platform, and check out the show. Subscribe, like, follow, and share. And also, you can click on the banner, and that will take you to the How Now YouTube channel, where you can watch our shows in color. For those who don't listen and they like to watch, you can go ahead and click on that banner, join the YouTube channel, subscribe there, and check out the show. Again, that is www.hownowpodcast.com. So let's get into today's show. We're just going to be talking about victory over grief and sorrow in challenging times. We know that this has been a season. We are 2.5 years, almost 3 years into this pandemic. And it has not been easy for people to move from a space of fear into a space of understanding and knowledge and into a space of empowerment. It's been a challenge. We've had so many things that have been going on that have brought us grief and sorrow, the loss of loved ones, the condition and the state of our political and civil environment, world things that are going on around us. And it's been a challenge. And we need to be in a space where we can say, how now, what now, and what next? And to help me to dig a little deeper into that is my guest. And as is customary with the How Now podcast, I'm going to have him to introduce himself at this time.
Well, thank you so much, Kim. My name is Benton Thompson III, and I'm an author and a motivational speaker, amongst other hats that I wear, but that's what I do right now. So wonderful. So glad to be here.
Awesome. We are so excited to have you here and to talk about some of the things that you are doing. We have some exciting things that are happening in and through your life and that you're sharing with the world. And we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But let's talk first about some of the things that were going on with you prior to this pandemic. Kind of like to start out that way to see where we were and where we're going in this now. So talk
very good. I think that for most of us, it was what we refer to as BAU, business as usual. We're just kind of going about our way, doing the things that we do, and perhaps really not being as aware or tuned into certain things. And so by trade, I'm an engineer by trade, and so I do a lot of engineering work, but my heart is ministry, in teaching and sharing. And so I've written a number of books, I do speaking engagements. And so just kind of, as I said, prior to the pandemic, going about my way, doing the things, business as usual, nothing's a change, everything is the same. But then all of a sudden we came to that screeching halt. That's and right. It got everyone's attention. So
absolutely,
that's
absolutely. It. I like that. BAU, business as usual.
Yeah, and business as usual, right.
You're going along, everything's going fine. You have some interests, you have some, like you said, speaking engagements, right. Your career, everything's going well. And then, of course, as we know, March 2020 came and all of a sudden, everything came to a screeching halt, and it's funny because you hear people say, I want the world to stop, stop the world, I want to get off. And then it literally stopped.
There was your chance. There's your chance.
Right. Be careful what you ask for, right?
That's exactly
Somebody was saying that the day before and was like, uh-oh.
Right. Here's your chance.
Right. And so what happened when the pandemic hit for you? What was some of the personal and professional
at that point in time, I was out of town. I was at a convention, an engineering convention. We were there, and as news and word was coming in, it was almost unfathomable. It's like, well, is this a joke? Is this real? And you could see everyone responding and reacting accordingly, trying to find that space, trying to find out how now, right at the precipice of that, it was like, well, how now? What do we do? Do we continue to do business as usual? Do we stop? What is the new reality? What's going to happen now? And everybody was kind of searching, but Kim, one of the things that I loved about it, that sometimes there's that hidden gem. And the beautiful thing in this was it was a global pandemic.
Yes.
We were all going through it together. And there's few incidents that you can say we are all going through it together. And we went through it together as a global community everywhere around the world. And everybody was trying to figure out how now.
That's right.
How now? Everyone was trying to figure it out together. So
that's right. And I love that you said that, because that is so true. There are very few instances, well, at least not in our lifetime.
Not in our lifetime.
Something happened to everyone at the same time, and we all were reacting to it in different ways. So it showed how we were the same but different too in how we respond to things. And that's where things kind of broke off into those categories that I continuously talk about, where it's, we all started in that space of fear, because this was something that none of us had ever experienced. So we were all like, what? Just like you said, how or whatnot. And then we had to start moving to, okay, so we know what happened. Now how are we supposed to deal with this? What are we supposed to do next? Like you said.
Exactly. Well, that place brought us to a place of uniformity for the 8 billion people. 8 billion people. We were all dealing with the same thing at the same time. Typically, you'd say, well, hey, this is an American problem, or this is an African problem, or that's a European problem. No, this is a world problem. It's like, how are we're going to have to deal with this together and work through it together. And so that's what you see happening now. And your shows just like this has given us the opportunity to have those conversations, to talk together, to figure out, to get understanding. I tell people this all the time, Kim, that when you look at a situation, it has to do with perspective. But then how do we get perspective? I always say that if you look at a box has 6 sides to it, 4 sides and a top and a bottom. And so if I'm looking at it, at the most, I can only see maybe 3 sides at a time. So I need you to say, hey, Kim, what are you seeing from the other side? Right. And so together we can see it all. So that's what this global perspective has done. It allows us to see things we couldn't see before.
Absolutely. And I love that. Because it is, you would have thought that, when we talk about something that is happening to all of us at the same time, and that there should have been a uniformity, a coming together of the minds, and, where we're all coming together and trying to figure out how can we resolve this as a world,
Right.
and unfortunately we've seen some of the opposite. We've seen the opposite.
That's what's happened, because the event, that's if you will, that's the purpose of it, was to push us together, because we weren't together. We were so siloed. Everybody's doing their own thing, even in communities, and unfortunately, even in households. Somebody's over in that room, somebody's over there. Well, hey, this like, no, y'all gonna come together on this. Begrudgingly or not, you're coming together, the world. So now we're having these conversations with people that you wouldn't normally talk to. So all of these things are really, I think, are being directed. You see racial conversations, shootings, things that everything is making us, let's begin to talk to one another. Let's begin to share. Let's begin to show. Let's begin to figure it out together. How now?
Right. And I love that. And just like we were talking a little earlier, I was saying that, 2 things happen. Either the scales fall from your eyes and you see what's happening, or you see things for what they are, or the masks are falling off and people are being exposed for who they are, and so, and then it's just a matter of where do you fall in? And then it's also a matter of saying what's happening around us. Yes, we're shining a light on things that we were, conditioned to ignore. We had to sit with ourselves first. Yeah, because when you think about sitting just being confined to your own home, you have to sit with you first. And a lot of people sitting with themselves, sitting with their families, were realizing I thought this was where I wanted to be, but you had that little outlet. You could go outside, you could hop in your
Go
car and
outside.
go somewhere if you didn't want to deal with it. And now it's like, nope, you can't go outside. So now what are you going to have
Go
to do?
outside.
It forced us to have to deal
Right.
with what was
Right.
happening in our right in front of our own faces.
Yeah.
What
It
happened,
made us interact with one another. It's kind of like a storm, when a storm happens and you lose power and the lights go off, you're like, oh Lord, please let the lights come back on. Because we don't want to have to sit there and not know what to do. It's uncomfortable, but it's also an opportunity for growth. Every trauma brings about growth out of it. When you saw things with 9/11, it's created to incite growth. So this is our chance to move. It's a shoving, saying, hey, transition, move into something different, move out of the old. We can't stay where we were. So that's what it's designed to do.
That's it. We always talk about leaps of faith. Okay, some people getting pushed over the they get pushed over the cliff.
Exactly right.
Here's your leap. You either gonna fly or it's gonna hurt when you land. You start, it's amazing when you get pushed. You just start doing things. You get pushed in the water. You start flapping your arms. You start doing things to get into, because you're in survival mode.
Exactly right.
What can I do? How am I going to save myself?
We want stability. We think that that's what we thrive. But I always say it like this: life is ups and downs. If you go to the hospital, you want that meter to be doing this. If it's doing,
that's right. That's right.
So we're not going to get a flatline life. It's going to be ups and downs, and it's how we navigate that accordingly. The ebbs and the flows. That means we are alive. Ups and downs. If I'm flatline, if it's just like this,
right,
life is no more.
Yeah,
so we have ebbs and flows and have to negotiate those accordingly.
Yeah, I tell people it's not always balanced. Sometimes it's not always black and white. It's not always up or down. It's not that. It is, like you said, ebbs and flows. So I always say, it's a matter of harmony. To me, it's harmony. It is that wave.
Those are growth moments. We grow when you're trying to get the scales balanced back. That's the growth moment. I don't grow if I don't have any activity, had nothing to do, I'm not being stretched. Those are opportunities to say, okay, let's grow, let's develop. And again, with this global activity, is like, let's develop together. No more silos, no more me and my four, no more. No, we're coming together. We're all coming together. So.
Right. And that is so critical. And and being able to move, like you said, from like we were talking about earth, from a space of fear, because a lot of people are getting stuck. And then when the grief and the sorrow kick in, it begins to slow us down. And we want to be in a position of being able to stand, because once we lay down and we begin to succumb to what's happening around us, then we start to become we're buried. Because now those things are coming on top of us. When we're standing and someone, say, throws dirt at us, that dirt will hit us, but it'll fall off. But when we're laying down, it begins to cover us, and it begins to compound. And then we are no longer in a position, or it's a little harder for us to be able to get up.
Makes it tough for us to dig our way out of, because you have so many layers and so much of that is happening. And so, with that, the thing that's, again, we're uniquely made. Each one of us is different. We were all handcrafted. And so when you look at as I say again, all of us, unique fingerprints. Our fingerprints don't match one another, even identical twins, the dental imprint. But this shows us there are certain commonalities, there are certain threads, and sorrow and grief is one of them that we all experience. That don't matter what your socioeconomic status is, you're going to experience that. And so then we figure out, how do you navigate through this? This time has been so much uncertainty, but again, the purpose for uncertainty is birth and growth. We have to embrace that change, because the only thing constant is change. So we have to embrace the change and grow with it.
That's right. And that just speaks to the fact that, life is not static. It is not just, we may have said, okay, well, this is what my life is going to like for the rest of my life. And then the whole world stopped. And then it was like, psych. No, that's not the way. We live in a very fluid society.
The world is constantly orbiting. So we're constantly in motion. There is no stoppage. So we have to figure out how to negotiate through that. And that's part of the reason why I wrote the devotional that I did, just sharing with others how to negotiate. So, things are common. We have these things that are common to one another.
That's it. So let's talk about that, because you just recently had a 5-day study that was has been accepted by the Bible app, by the YouVersion Bible app, and for those who are familiar. And I mean, first of all, kudos to you for that, because that is something that is worldwide in several languages, and people will have an opportunity to, participate in this 5-day study. So talk to us a little bit about how that was birthed, how that started, or did it start during the pandemic, before the pandemic? Where were you in that process?
It started really before the pandemic. I personally have gone through a lot of family grief, in a span, Kim, of 10 years. I lost my mother, 2 sisters, a brother, and a nephew.
Wow.
That's a lot to have compounded in there. And so for me, again, with our own uniqueness, but there are things that are common. So that's what kind of led me to my whole writing career. I thought there are certain commonalities, there's common answers, because we have common problems. And my father, who was a mathematician, he said, hey, if you figure out how to, the solution, the formula, you can solve any problem. And so I take time to figure out what's the formula, what's going on here. So with this here, and I'm often looking for answers and solutions. And so having dealt with that grief and that sorrow, just to the point that I felt I can't go on, and I look for examples. And so that's what I saw because of my faith. I saw that with Jesus, said, who can experience the depths of the sorrow that I have? Who can know this? And, proverbially, I saw the Lord raise his hand. I can. I can identify with you. I carried every grief and every sorrow that you will ever experience. And that was the whole purpose of it. And that's what I wrote in my devotional, that a lot of people expected when they thought, okay, well, here's the Messiah. Isaiah is prophesying about the Messiah some 700 years prior to his coming. And everybody's thinking, okay, is he going to be, just courageous like David? Is he going to be strong like Samson? Is he going to be a great general like Joshua? And really what Isaiah, the vision that God had given, was of a very mild-mannered man, an average Joe, an average John, average Jill, as it were. And people couldn't understand that. But Jesus wanted to relate to us. He didn't want to be above us. He wanted to relate with us and come here. And I tell people, even with pastoring, and that's what Jesus was, a pastor. I said a good pastor or a good shepherd ought to smell like his sheep.
That's right.
Hello now.
Woo.
You have to smell like the sheep. You don't need to smell like the latest and greatest fragrance. You need to smell like the sheep because you're walking among them. So through this, I thought the remedies, the solutions, the salve that I saw Jesus applying to me, I thought, let me share this with others who are hurting, who are broken, and somebody's looking for, can anybody identify with my pain? Can anybody understand it? And so I wrote this 5-day devotional to kind of walk us through the things that Jesus went through so we can identify with him, because his job was to identify with us, even in our sorrows and in our grief, to understand what we've been through. So now we say, you know what? There is one. Is there one? There is one that can understand what I'm going through and what I've experienced. And so that's why I wrote the devotional, because as I said, I personally had experienced it. And, even this, Kim, I'll say this to you, even if someone lost their mother as well, we still experience it differently. Their relationship with their mother might not have been with like your relationship was, or whomever it is. And so we have to find we're looking. And so you go through counseling, you understand things. And one of the things I went through in counseling, I'll just say this, my daughter took me to counseling. She said, Dad, hey, let's go. So I'm pastor, ordained minister. Dad, you need counseling. Great. We have to be ready to receive from others. One of the things they told me in that counseling was this here. Said that when that hurt, when that pain comes, they said, just let it effervesce, let it bubble up. Don't try to sequester, don't try to hold it in. So I would be somewhere, and if I felt like crying, I would just cry. I'm human. We hurt. God cries. He said he bottles up every tear that we cry. So who can better relate to us than the Lord? So that's why I wrote the devotional, so people can understand that.
That is awesome. That is awesome. First of all, I love that you said, I had to write it down. Pastor needs to smell like his sheep because he's amongst them. And that's something that is critical to understand, because it is about that connection. That's how we come to establish relationships and to begin to acknowledge them and to grow them into something healthy, because we've made that connection. And we're not looking that that person is above us or below us, but walking with us and beside us in this experience that we're having. So that's something, like you said, that is critical. And being able to seek out that help that we need, knowing that we can't always operate and function in and of ourselves. No man is an island. We know that we cannot do all things by ourselves, but we need to, and we respond better when we realize that somebody has had that similar or same experience. We're like, oh wow, because we tend to think, in a little bit of our self-centered way, that we're the only one that has ever experienced that. And like, no, darling, there are, like you said, 8 billion people on this planet. There's somebody who has experienced, if not the same thing, a variation, because there are different variables for everyone, or a slight variation of what it is that you've experienced. And there's something
we can share
to be
our
learned.
stories, we can learn together, because again, back to that six-sided perspective, I can't see everything. And so I'm like, hey, Sister Kim, tell me what you see. Hey, well, Benton, I see this one. And so now we can begin to put those together. I often tell people this example, if I'm, and that's what causes issues or problems. We don't realize we're seeing the same thing. Kim, if I'm standing here and I'm like, hey, I see headlights and an ornament and a grill. You're like, well, Benton, I see taillights and a bumper. So obviously we're not looking at the same thing. No, dear, we are. We're looking at the same car from two different perspectives. And if we can hear one another and have a heart for one another, then now I can understand what you see from that perspective. And now I can know the whole thing because I've listened to you. That's what we have to do, is listen to one another and share our stories, share our pain, share our joys. We have to share.
And I love that you say also, to let those feelings effervesce. That is so critical and important, because, that goes back to science and homeostasis. Okay. It has been, here in Atlanta, it was 97 degrees today. It was hot. Your body sweats because it does not want to overheat. So it knows what to do automatically. It automatically starts to kick in and say, okay, we need to sweat. We need to get, this heat out of our body, and what we tend to do, what we tend to do is we suppress our feelings, or we've been conditioned or taught to suppress our feelings. I think about our young boys. We tell, man up, stop crying. Okay, but that's part of homeostasis too. That's how, when we're having a mental or emotional situation happen to us, it's natural for us to cry or to wince in pain if we're hurt. And if we're told to suppress that, we're going against what's natural for our bodies to do to get us back to a space of wellness. So if we suppress it, we can't get there if we're not expressing or getting it out of our system. And so we're putting ourselves in a dangerous position when we don't allow ourselves to express.
Because the key that you said is the healthy, because so through sweating and perspiring, those toxins, we're pushing them out of our system. And so they'll tell you, so when you catch a cold, they want you to sweat. Why? To push the toxins out. So it's actually a healing process to release. When we have to use the restroom, you have to get those toxins out of you. And so the same thing emotionally. These are toxins. I've got to let them out of me. This pain will kill me. This sorrow will choke me out. I have to let it out. And we have to understand it. And so even as you said about the misnomer about what it means to be a man or this, that. My father told me something once. He told me this brief story here, Kim. And he said there was this lady and she lived in this house and she had this very beautiful tapestry on the floor, very expensive. And she had this heavy furniture. And so she needed to move the dresser from one side of the room to the other side of the room. She obviously couldn't do it. She sees this big burly gentleman walking by. She goes, hey, I'll get him. So, sir, help me move this from this place to here without tearing up the rug. Well, he's this big guy and he's grabbing it and grappling with it, and he's about to tear the carpet up. She goes, no, forget it. So there's just an average guy just walking by, and he's just, just average. And he goes, say, ma'am, I can help you. And she says, you can help me? He comes in, picks it up, and lifts it up and sets it down on the floor. My father said the moral of the story is it takes a really strong man to be gentle.
Wow.
So that's it. Takes
See
a
that?
strong, it's not a big man. So if you're gentle, that shows that you're a strong man. And so with people telling people, hey, we got to do this, or man up, or woman up, what's the ideology behind that?
Right.
Who says this is what I have to do? Why do I have to conform to your standards? I'm this way because God made me this way. And so we have to be empowered being who we are and allowing ourselves to feel what we feel.
That's it. And not feel as though we're being judged.
Right.
You know?
There's no mold for you, Kim. God broke it. There's no mold for me. He broke it. So we are one of a kind. And I wrote a book about that. We are divinely dysfunctional, unique on purpose. We are one of a kind. And these are the things that I share. Even on my website, I have a weekly blogs, and it's Thompson Truths. And these are things about truths, about spirituality, because people make the relationship with God so mystic and so spooky and so complicated. And that's not God. I mean, when you look through the Bible, Jesus isn't using $50 words. He's making it plain and simple and comprehensible. And so that's, again, there's that shepherd smelling like the sheep. He's talking to the sheep. He's not talking above the sheep, and he's not talking down to the sheep. He's right there. And that's what we have to do, is relate to one another.
That's it. And I love that you say that we are uniquely made, because we are. And one thing that is my favorite analogy is, we have had experiences in our lives that have caused us levels of brokenness and sorrow, and it's almost like shards of glass. But when you wrap those in love and in faith and in hope, that's the cement that makes it a beautiful mosaic. And those shards of glass, when they are combined or cemented together, make something that is so beautiful and unique to who we are. So yes, we're all broken pieces of glass, but we don't look the same when we're bound back together.
And nothing is more beautiful than stained glass.
That's right.
Which is beautiful, all the colors. And so even that, all things are working together. That has a purpose. So your brokenness has a purpose. And what happens is, like, even if you work out in the gym, they'll tell you, you're going in there and you're building muscle. Well, how do I build muscle? By breaking down muscle. I got to break it down, and then I build it up. So these things that we're experiencing, they are by design to break down so we can build up and come back even stronger. And that's really what God has me do through everything. I'm about empowering and sharing and strengthening one another, because we are all connected. They talk about the 6 degrees of separation. I think now we're actually closer than 6 degrees. Again, the global pandemic. Now that wasn't 6 degrees. We were experiencing the same thing at the same time.
Right. And it's amazing, because we do tend to migrate into similar spaces that we're familiar with. I think about, I'm from New York. I moved to Atlanta. I went to saw people who I graduated from high school with. And you would think, how in the world did they wind up in the same area? Because you tend to go into spaces that you're familiar with, or that remind you of some place that you've been. And so, this particular area in Atlanta reminds us of the area that we lived in back home. And so people tend to migrate, and then you run, and you're like, how in the world is it that we could be, all these many years later, be in the same space? So when you talk about those degrees of separation, because there are things that connect us on so many different levels, and it's just a matter of saying, okay. And then when we run into each other, it's like, oh my goodness, how are you doing? What's going on with you? And then we're seeking to see, okay, so what has happened since then that connects us, that moves us into this same space. So I mean, the one thing that we talk about with your study and with those 5 days and going and making that deeper dive, is taking an opportunity to look and see, okay, how was it that he lived? How was it that, how is it that we live? And what are some of the things, what are some of the commonalities that we see when he was here on earth?
Right. And see, with that example, he gave us an example, because I think you and I were talking about this even before the show began, that sometimes we place a big emphasis on our physical, our spiritual man. And sometimes we'll get deep in thought, but we really don't pay attention to our spiritual man. And that's another book I wrote, which was talking about, how to hear God. And so we have to address it through all three aspects of us. And as a thought comes in, it's like we have to say, who said that? I'm hungry. Well, that's my body that's saying that. We ain't going to church today. That's my spirit that's saying that. I mean,
That's
it's my
right.
soul that's saying it. So we have to look at these things. And so the purpose of that was for Jesus to show us he can identify with us. He can connect with us. It's relational. Now, here's what happens. So many people think it's religious. Religious just means you do something through repetition.
Right.
It's relational. We have to connect with one another. And so through the study, it's 5 days. And so each day I'm connecting with one another, and we're connecting with each other, and we're connecting with God and understanding he is our creator. He is our maker. So what's his take on this? Lord, why did you do this? Why did Jesus go through the suffering that he did? And again, he came so he can relate to us. He's relatable. The Bible says he was tempted in everything that we're tempted with. And so when we think we're tempted, we're like, oh no, I can't go to God. Jesus says, hey, I've experienced it. I know it. And that's the problem that Adam and Eve did when they felt that they had done something wrong. They ran from God. And you saw God came looking for them. Who told you that I didn't love you? Who told you we weren't still family? He's saying, come back to me. Let's talk about it. And see, that's a nuance there, Kim, that many don't understand. God said, be truthful with me. As parents, you don't want your children to lie to you. Tell them the truth. Hey, daddy, mama, I ate the cookies. I ate them all up. I ate all the cookies.
And
Well,
look
baby,
at
go
them.
on and
That's
tell
right.
me. You want that truth. And so the Lord is the same way. He's no different. We have to get out of this mindset. I can only say good. He's like, be honest at all costs. Again, another something my father told me. He said, hey, whatever you're going to do, he said, at least tell somebody the truth. I'm gonna go down here, I'm gonna do some dirt down. I'm gonna tell somebody. So if something happens to you, they know where to go get you.
That's right.
They
That's
know where
right.
to
Ooh,
drag you
those
up
sure
out of there.
words.
So we
That's
have to
right.
be honest and tell people the truth
That's
and
it.
even share with one another. Hey, come to find a partner or a brother, somebody that a sister, someone you can share and say, you know what, can I be honest with you? Because God's word again says that's how we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And folks are not wanting to just be honest and be transparent and be naked. You and I were doing that right before the show. You said, hey, let me
That's
tell
right.
you, Benton, this is what I went through. I'm like, hey, dear, let me tell
That's
you,
right.
there's some of the things I've been through. And as a result of that, we get healed. Why? Because again, we're letting it out. We're
That's
letting
right.
it out. And that's how we get healed.
I love that, and I hope people are writing these things down. It's important for us to do that, to be truthful with ourselves. Anything. I always have a thing of saying to people, I'm not gonna lie to myself or to you. I'm just gonna tell you
There you
what it
go.
is.
That's exactly
I'm
right.
going to tell you what it is. This is what I'm going through. And this is me being transparent. And just like you were talking about in the beginning, this pandemic has pushed us together because it forced us to be able to address the things that it because we're so used to flight. We hear that fright, flight. You're fearful. The first thing you do is run. You run away. We're not taught to run to our problems or to seek the solution. We're taught to run away and to
Run
hide.
away.
And there's never any cure or hope of ever being able to get past it if we continue to run from it. At some point,
Exactly.
we
There's
have to
no
run
resolution.
to it. Yeah, we have to run
Exactly.
to it and face it head on. And that's where the discomfort comes in. We're not
Yeah.
comfortable with doing that because we have not been taught or conditioned to do that.
And see,
It was normal for us to run.
it's and like Kim, I tell people we've missed it on being uncomfortable. So I play golf
Mhm.
now, and if I'm taking, hey Kim, let's go play golf, and I'm like, hold the club, you're like, well, Benton, this is uncomfortable. Yeah, dear, because you've never played golf before. So it's like we have to get away from being afraid of being uncomfortable because this is what you have to do to be able to execute this properly. So there's certain things, there's certain positions we're going to have to get in. They're going to be uncomfortable, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to yield a great return and a great result for us. So go ahead, be uncomfortable, feel, because it's like there's something new in this. You're operating in a new space. You're entering into a new era. It's the unknown. The unknown is going to always be uncomfortable. Why? Because you don't know it.
That's
You
right.
don't know it.
That's right. And that goes back to the word and where it tells us to be childlike in our thoughts. How do
Exactly.
children learn? Through trial and error. You know, they put their
Trial and
hand
error.
on that stove and then it's just like, ouch, that hurt. Okay, they're gonna do it again.
Exactly.
Some are gonna try it again because they're gonna be like, wait a minute, let me make sure I was right about how that felt. Then they're
Yeah,
gonna be someone gonna be like, okay, I'll never have to touch that again. I know that if I touch that, it's going to hurt,
it's
and
gonna
they
hurt.
and they've learned from it. But they children are the most daring. They're jumping off of roofs and falling off of things and doing it, but because that's how they learn.
That's how,
And
and that's how
sometimes
all of us learn.
we have to revert back
We have to
to
learn.
those
You
childlike
know
and asking why.
why?
Children, that's the biggest thing there. Why all day long. What is it? And we have to be childlike in our thinking as well. Why? Why do we believe what we believe? Why do we
It,
feel the way we feel?
exactly.
And that it's okay to tap into that and to determine why. I want to know why I'm acting like this. Sometimes, sometimes you do something and you just, I don't even understand why I did that. Have you taken
Well,
time to try to
and
figure out why?
it's a part of your destiny, your DNA. Something else I wrote again in the book there, Divinely Dysfunctional. There's these things that people label as dysfunction. Left-handed people were once labeled as dysfunctional.
I'm
Redheaded
left-handed
people
all
were
day
named
too.
dysfunctional. But who says? And so I talk about some people in that book just briefly, Kim. There was this guy, and he was a Star Trek fan. He was
Mhm.
just a Trekkie extraordinaire. And you're like, wow, isn't that some kind of nut? Well, you know who that nut was? Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a
Wow.
Star Trek fan. Why? Because he could see shaping and forming new worlds. There's these idiosyncrasies about this. There was this other guy, he was infatuated with the size of peas and a fork. He would get a fork for every size pea and flick it through the air and watch how it flew. But he was an aeronautics guy. He later grew the spruce, the planes. And so this uniqueness, this oddity about you, it does serve a purpose.
Yeah.
You are divinely created. You are unique on purpose. And as we have these conversations, then we start to can embrace and appreciate one another and love and so be supportive of one another, even if it's different. It doesn't mean it's
I love this. I love this. Like you said, victory over grief in
wrong.
challenging times. These are things that are important that are going to help us. The one thing that I want us to always remember is that, you know, when we have things or when things happen to us, that we're creating a toolbox because it's not that the situation will never happen again. It's that, this situation happened to prepare us for the next thing that's going to happen.
Right.
Okay. We don't want to not fill our toolbox. We don't want to just sit there and go, phew, okay, we made it through that one. All right, so I'm good. Like it's never going to happen again. Okay. All right. You go into your bathroom and you think, okay, the toilet got clogged. I got that plunger out. I plunged it. It worked and now it's doing fine. You think it's never going to get clogged again? Okay. But the next time you want to make sure that you have a plunger and not a pencil or a paintbrush that's not going to serve you any purpose. You're going to need that tool. So what are we doing to fill our toolbox so when things happen again, we're not reacting, but being proactive in the solution?
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. Yeah.
that's the thing.
That's
We're
key.
building
That's key.
toolboxes. These platforms and these conversations are intentional to create toolboxes so that we can begin to fill our toolboxes with things that we need. So when we say, oh, wait a minute, there's a loose screw here. Let me run over to my toolbox because I know I've got a screwdriver in there, Phillips head or flathead, that's going to help me to screw that screw back in. Or, oh my goodness, there's some paint chipping on the wall. Let me go and grab that paintbrush. Do we have the things that we need? And do they serve in the situation that we're in? That's
Someone else that we know has the tool or know how to operate the tool. So we have to be able to listen and learn and grow from one another because we are connected. The Bible talks about all parts of the body are fitly joined together. Fitly joined. So that means there's something that have a purpose in your life. You have a purpose in my life. So I have to allow you to serve that purpose, and you have to allow me to serve, and then that way we can grow together. And that's the whole thing. There's that saying said, hey, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go with somebody.
there you go. There you go. There you have it. Okay,
That's
honey.
it.
I hope y'all were getting these nuggets. Ooh, Okay, because you have said a word today. You have said a word today. I am so thankful and appreciative that you've taken time out of your schedule to come and to talk to us about, making these small changes and pivots and the things that are necessary for us to do, to talk about perspective, how we're seeing things, and being able to ask others, how is it that you're seeing it, and
Right.
and not taking that for granted. The one thing that we never want to do is discount how someone feels, or what somebody's perspective is on something, but to honor it as their truth. And then we can begin to have the conversation, about, whether we agree or disagree, but it's never to discount that it's real to that person. That's
Real
where
to them.
empathy comes in. We hear that
It
word
does.
all the time. Empathy. We have to be able to empathize with others and say, okay, I realize that this is your reality.
Exactly.
And
And I use that as an example, Kim. I tell people that I can't feel what you feel, but I can have respect for what you feel. So, darling, if I step on your foot and you say, "Hey, Benton, you stepped on my foot," I can't feel that, but I can align myself with what you've experienced. I can identify with that. I've experienced pain, and so we have to get out of thinking that you're going to feel what they feel. No. If I step on your foot, I'm not going to feel what you felt, but I can have empathy and sympathy and
that's right.
kindness and
That's
love for what you've experienced. I go, oh, great. I too have had pain before. And we have to seek ways to identify with people, to come together, as opposed to looking at the things. There are so few things that separate us. There are more things that bring us together. And again, that's what the pandemic has shown us. Hey, come together. Let's solve this together.
Right. I love it. I love it. So one thing I definitely want to do, of course, before we sign off out of here, is we want to ask you how people can get in contact with you, how they can be able to go on the app and do your 5-day study. So tell us how they can get in contact with you.
I think so. So the app is on, as you said, the YouVersion Bible app, and so you go to your app store, download the YouVersion Bible app if you don't have it. But so many do, because there are 500 million unique users in all around the world. 500 million, but they're still growing, because we got 8 billion versus 500 million.
That's
So a
right.
lot of us don't have it. So download the app, and if you just there's the search part, and if you type in "Jesus carried our sorrows to victory," it'll pull up my app, my devotional plan. And so it's just that simple. Jesus carried our sorrows to victory. And it'll say, do you want to pull up a plan? And you'll see me right there. It'll be Benton T. Thompson III devotional. So you can also go to my website, which is benton.thompson, benton.thompson, .com, right? Benton Thompson III.com. And so again, Benton is BENTON, Thompson, THOMPSON, III for the third.com. And there's all my information. And Kim, I'd love to come out, and I'm looking forward to coming back again. And if someone would have me to speak and share more, I do intimate Bible studies. We can talk, we can share the Bible. Said, hey, let us reason together. So I'd love to come and speak and share, and anything I could to help. So
Absolutely.
we can do the how now and get to the what's next.
Okay. Hey, he said, how now, what now, and what's next? Okay, look, he's on to something. So we will definitely be having you back again. That's www.benton.thompson, or just Benton Thompson.
It's an II.com. I'm sorry.
Benton Thompson, III.com. Okay. And then you can download the YouVersion Bible app. And the name of his study is Jesus Carried Our Sorrows to Victory. Of course, that will be in the description when the show airs. So you will be able to connect with him and to find out how he can be a part of what it is that you're doing on your spiritual, physical, mental journey. So again, we thank you so much for being here with us. And we've only just begun. Okay, but one more question, of course, as I always ask all of my guests at the end of the show: what are some things that you're doing to live in this now? What are you doing to navigate in this space personally?
personally, I'm being more in tune, more attentive, noticing things, and being in the now. That was the mistake before. Business as usual. There is no business as usual. Now we hear there's a new norm, and it is. It's every day being consciously aware of others around us. So I'm just being more mindful and more cognizant of this very moment that I'm in now. That's what I'm doing right now.
That's it. That's how you get the fullness of that moment, by living in it and
In
not
the
living
now.
past it, or not paying attention to it. When we
Right.
embrace it, then we receive the fullness of everything that we are supposed to experience in it. So I love that is something that you're doing. It's about living in the now. And with that, that will say that will be the end of our show. We thank you again for being here. We look forward to having you back. Are there any other words that you would like to leave with our listeners before we go?
Always keep your head up. Always, every time there's new opportunities, there's something there. But if our head is down, you can't see. So always lift your head up. Keep your head up physically, spiritually. Be aware. Be in tune, sensitive, and there's something there waiting for you, because God hasn't given up on you. So don't you give up on yourself.
All right. And to that, I say amen. And that will do it for this edition of the How Now podcast, where we talk about how to live in the now. And until I see you the next time, I say peace.